online classes on various texts, which I realized at some point, not at the beginning, were paths of initiation. So we've done Gospel of John, done Genesis, we've done the Apocalypse, we've done the seal, the apocalyptic seals, and the philosophy of freedom. And last year, some of the people who are in this course, which is open to everybody, but there's people all over the world in these courses. Somebody said, well, couldn't we do the chemical wedding? And I said, well, maybe. It had been a little obscure to me. As a good anthroposophist, I didn't know of its existence, but that was about all. But I was, pretty cocky at that point. And, I've done these other things with people and online and everything, and it had been successful. So I thought, well, how crazy could it be? And so I said, yes, we'll do it. And then I had to begin to get ready and make the exercises for it. And then, so that gave me about a month to prepare for starting it. And then I had to read it more carefully. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is this whole thing? But I said yes. And I had this whole group of people. There ended up being about 30 people in the group. It started with maybe 40, and then it went down to 30 because some people were like, whoa, this is just too crazy. But mostly people stayed, and so we started last September and worked every week online with an online class every week with these kind of, I wouldn't even say they were lessons that I made. I think I made kind of an indication that people could work with, painting and drawing, and we met every week and we painted and drew and created. There's a huge amount of work that got created and lots of conversation about what this all was about, which was mostly questioning. But I think that by the time we finished, it took us 7 months, we all had a feeling for what this was about, for the transformation that was occurring in this story. Although I don't know that very many of us could articulate exactly what that transformation is, but there was like a feeling level very different than when we started, which was kind of like, I don't know what's going on. By the end, I think everybody felt like, okay, I know what's going on, I just can't articulate it. So I just wanted to give you that as a lead-in to this, and then I'll turn it over to Gloria, who's going to do the impossible, and wonderful that you are doing this.
We'll see. I got a phone call this morning, and family and the person on there, very deep anthroposophist, and she said, what have you been doing these days? I said, well, I'm going to go on a panel about the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz. And she said, oh, I tried reading that, and that was not, she said, I put it down. Which is the feeling that I think a number of us had once we started reading it. But so here is the impossible, and I hope it doesn't sound too much like the Reader's Digest version, but I'm not going to tell the whole story, but only a little piece of the beginning to give you a sense of what it feels like. So this work was a written work. It was written by Johann Valentin André in 1660. He was a German philosopher of some note, although not very popular in modern philosophy, but he's somewhat known. And he had an interesting footnote to the Chemical Wedding that he wrote. He said it was a work of his young age, which is kind of a puzzle because it's a mature story in a way, but there are elements of satire and humor that sounds like it might have come from a young person experiencing what was around him in the esoteric circles where he might have traveled. So it is, it really has the elements of a fairy tale. And it starts on the eve of Easter, the night before Easter. This old man is in his cottage, which is high on a hill, and there's a raging storm around. And he's deep in thought, deep in meditation, deep in prayer, when he feels a presence behind him. And when he turns, he finds that it is a beautiful, angelic being who hands him an envelope, which is an invitation to a wedding which will take place in 7 days. He's quite baffled by this at first, but then he remembers that 7 years before, he had had a vision or an inspiration that he was going to be invited to a wedding someday. And finally, after 7 years, that happened. So he got himself a good night's sleep with a dream that's reported in the Chemical Wedding. He wakes up, he gears himself up, he packs his backpack, and he heads out on the journey. And he's going along the road, and for a while, quite a while, because he was tired, but he comes to a place where there are crossroads. The road splits into 4. And there is a sign there that tells him that 3 of those paths will lead to the castle. One of them will not lead to the castle. So the 3 roads are, one is very steep, but it's the shortest. The other is winding and easy to take, but it's very long. And then there is the royal road, and then the one that's never going to get to the castle. So it on the sign also says that once you've started on the road, you can't turn back. So he's faced there with quite a dilemma, because his future is going to, it will be shaped by the decisions he makes. So he sits down to think. And what he decides to do is actually have his lunch, which is always a good thing to do. when you have a question on your mind, get his mind off. So he's sitting there eating his lunch, and he sees a white dove in the tree above who's looking at him very longingly. And as the dove approaches, and he offers a morsel of bread. The dove flies away happily with it, but a raven pursues it very vigorously and viciously. And our traveler has formed a relationship to this dove and doesn't want it injured, so he goes running after. And of course, he doesn't catch up with him, and he has no effect on this scene or this event at all. But what he finds out is that he's already on a path, and as he turns, the winds are blowing so strong that he can't come off of it. But we're presuming that it's the royal road because of the outcome, because we read the book and we know the outcome. But along the way, in the course of the 7 days, he encounters kings, queens, virgins, towers, dungeons, castles, laboratories, ships, birds, and other animals. He experiences trials, mysteries, symbolic deaths, and transformations, and different odd ceremonies and odd objects which he does not necessarily understand. He's not your usual hero type. He's an old guy, he's bent over, he's confused, he's afraid, he experiences fear, he gets lost over the course of the days, he wanders around in the castle, and he goes somewhere he's not supposed to go, and he sees something he's not supposed to see, and he bumbles along this path. And yet, there is something steadfast about him. He has humility and a lack of ego sense about him, that he will follow what comes his way. He is courageous. He does what he's told. And one of his great gifts is that he's able to observe. He can stand and watch something that then unfolds for the readers of this story. So on he goes through these 7 days, and you will see in Laura's painting, and my colleague Cordelia here has done some beautiful drawings that has turned into a set of cards to get a sample of what some of this work is, and Torin has turned it into music as well. So you'll get a little sense of some of the work that we've done. But one of the fascinating things for me was that the ending, and some of you know the Chemical Wedding and know it quite well. The ending is quite unusual. Is our traveler comes to the brink of his initiation. He's just about ready to experience the initiation, when the author of the book says, oops, we've lost 4 pages, and but the fact is that he has returned home and he's in his bed. And I don't think I've ever read a story like that. It had that kind of, how can I say, connivance in it. But anyway, wakes up in his bed. And what is so typical Rosicrucian about that is that the Rosicrucian initiates were just, in life, they were not seen as special people. They were, the shoemaker or the butcher, or and they were deep initiates who were looking for and finding colleagues through esoteric means. And we can think of these secret brotherhoods that had a path. And even in Steiner's time, he came through a Rosicrucian initiation through the herb gatherer, who was trained in the Rosicrucian lore, and brought Steiner into Vienna, where he met the Rosicrucian master, who might have been Christian Rosenkreutz himself. So this lore, this strange book, and all of us who were doing the course along the way had times of shaking our head and saying, what is this all about? Because for us as modern individuals, it is really hard when you don't understand something. Most of us have been raised in universities, and you're supposed to know all the right answers to this, and especially if you study literature the way I am, there's supposed to be 100 interpretations of everything you see along the line. And there are endless commentaries that help people do that. And many of our participants in this program became real scholars of this work. Others stuck to the text as they were reading. reading through. I think I might try to identify three main threads that run through. First of all, running through the images and the path, there is of course the alchemy, the change from the metal into gold as an allegorical symbol of human development and human striving and human fulfillment. There is very strongly a Christian thread, especially with the images of death and resurrection. And the third and really prominent one is the path of initiation. The path that has its obstacles, its tasks, and once a task is completed, we confront the next one and the next one, which we see reflected in many occult movements and Masons. There are the steps in membership in the Rosenkreutz path. There are many steps along the way, but you take one step and then you go to the next and the next and the next to do initiation. And so that very much is a very strong theme that runs through. So that is kind of the Reader's Digest version orientation, which of course many of you know, but I'm happy to now turn over to Cordelia, who will share her process and her wonderful work that she's done.
Thanks. Yeah, that was really good. Those were like really good points. So what came out of this class for me was I made a deck of cards, tarot cards, sort of. There's only 20, but I was making all my paintings on these 8x10 canvases and kind of arranging them together, and started to think about them being cards, and then I noticed that a few of them felt connected to major arcana cards of the tarot, but not connected like through the imagery. Like for instance, the moment of the crossroads, the dove and the raven, that felt like the hanged man to me, even though the image has nothing to do with the hanged man, but like that moment of kind of suspension between where do I go? And so as I started writing descriptions for these cards, like for what that moment in the story could teach you if you drew that card, it was really cool how I started looking at meditations on the tarot, for just some of them, and because I had corresponded them in my head, but I was a little bit like, am I making this up? Like, is this real? And it always confirmed the connection. Like, I have a card, bread, water, and salt, which are the three things that Christian Rosenkreutz has in his bag or has with him when he sets out, and he ends up trading them all away. But of course, the interpretation commonly is that they're the thinking, feeling, and willing forces. And I had thought that this card felt like the magician card. And then I looked at Meditations on the Tarot, which is like a crazy, I couldn't read all of it, it's so long and there's so much. But for the magician, he talks about concentration without effort. And he uses the example of a tightrope walker. And he says, I want to read, concentration without effort, that is to say, where there is nothing to suppress, and where contemplation becomes as natural as breathing, is the state of consciousness, i.e. thought, imagination, feeling, and will, of perfect calm, accompanied by the complete relaxation of the nerves and the muscles of the body. It is the profound silence of desires, of preoccupations, of the imagination, of the memory, and of discursive thought. One may say that the entire being becomes like the surface of calm water, reflecting the immense presence of the starry sky and its indescribable harmony. And then kind of a side note, but that reminded me of a quote from the poet Jane Hirschfield about concentration. She said, "Immersion in art itself can be the place of entry, yet however it is brought into being, true concentration appears, paradoxically, at the moment willed effort drops away. At such moments, there may be some strong emotion present, a feeling of joy or even grief, but as often, in deep concentration, the self disappears. We seem to fall utterly into the object of our attention, or else vanish into attentiveness itself." So reading about the magician, I was like, yeah, it definitely corresponds to thinking, feeling, willing. And I had a few others like that too, where I questioned the connection I had drawn, and then I got like confirmation that it was a real thing. I wasn't just making things up. Which brings me to how doing this project really helped me trust my own self more, my own like thoughts, because when I started writing the descriptions, I was relying really heavily on the commentaries by Steiner and by Dennis Klocek. He has like a really good book about the chemical wedding. He seems to know so much about alchemy and all this stuff. But I had this pressure on myself to like basically just recapitulate what these people were saying and get it the right meaning. Like there's a correct interpretation for everything in the story, and I felt like I was just supposed to kind of re-say it. And it started to feel actually like a lot of pressure. And then my Dennis Klocek book went missing. And like I wouldn't even say I lost it. It was just like I wasn't taking it everywhere. It was should have been somewhere. It was gone. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, can I keep writing this? Should I order another book? And then I basically concluded that it was just a message to me that I should maybe rely a little more on like my own thoughts and my own interpretations, because especially like I've been to Waldorf school all my life. I worked for Camp Hill. I've been kind of steeped in anthroposophy, and I'm trying now to read Steiner more. So it's not like something that I think would be like the wrong thing. And that's when I added a Taylor Swift lyric into one of the descriptions, because, which might seem like when you're reading it a little bit disjointed or like, what is that doing there? But it was important to me because when I read that moment in the story, it immediately reminded me of this Taylor Swift song, and that was like my connection with that part of the story. And so I was like, well, I'm the one making these cards, I should just put that in. And it marked like a shift in, I feel like, the way I'm engaging with anthroposophy, because I've always felt like to engage with it, I have to like meet it somehow, even in a way that's like going back in time, or maybe changing or putting aside parts of myself to meet anthroposophy. And this kind of gave me a sense of it has to meet me, like it has to adapt to my life in the modern time, and I can kind of bring new life to it. So that was like quite almost an initiation for me in a certain way that this card project was for me. It felt like it changed the way I think about anthroposophy maybe, and the way I create. And I should mention I did end up leaving out the major arcana connections because it wasn't perfect. Like I only have 20 cards. I don't have every major arcana represented. But that really helped me in the process, and I decided to not put them in the booklet because I just want it to be what it is. Like, I don't want to say this is a major arcana. Like, it's just 20 random paintings that I made. And also I came across a scanner when I was kind of in the depths of this project, and it was dragging on, and in a very like fateful way, I would say, I just was presented with this free old Epson photo scanner that's like really good quality. So I was able to scan the paintings and make the cards that way. So I felt supported in this project, and it was a really great experience. I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own without this class and this group and like meeting every week and talking about it. So I'm really grateful that I ended up deciding to take this class. And yeah, it's been really great, and seeing everyone else's work too. And I'm selling the cards, and you can see them. I have a deck of them over there in a basket if you want to look at them. And I have some little postcards you can take that have like my Etsy and my Instagram on the back. And that's all I have to say. Thank you. Oh yes,
Nice.
Lauren.
Yes, I definitely suggest taking a look at those cards later on this evening. They're very beautiful, and you get another sense of the story in addition to Laura's paintings. And so my experience of the class, I'll just speak about briefly, and then of course we're going to move into the next room for a musical exploration of this text. And that came about because part of the process that Laura gave as an option to enter the text artistically was to create just caricature kind of stick figure representations of the tale visually, because it's so weird and you can't really follow what happened. There was an altar with a snake in the skull's eye, what? But if you just make a really quick sketch of the whole chapter and maybe a line that's going like this. So I was kind of doing that, and it wasn't anything artistically or visually pleasing, but somehow I thought, I could take pictures of these and put them like a stop motion video and make them kind of move, like Rosenkreutz is moving like this or something, going, the angel comes, and so I sat down, come on in guys. So I sat down and just imagined, I was like, what would this be musically? So I sat at the piano as if I was going to, I'm Kristen Rosenkreutz. I've been praying for 7 years. I feel something at my back. And then I recorded something simple, and and then put the music and the sketches together, and sometimes paintings. And that was so fun that I tried to do it as often as I could. And so now we're going to see a developed version of 7 of those songs with a band, and then I've turned the visual element over to a group of people that will be projecting colored light with some imagery stuff, so you get a 3-dimensional stop motion video for all of us to step into over there. And I think that's it for what I'll say now, because we'll go listen to it.
But before we do that, a couple of things also, because we have also billed it as 5 o'clock, and it's not 5 o'clock yet.
Oh.
So, a couple of things I wanted to say, and then I wanted to give you guys some time for questions. You might have questions after this, but I just want to point out that we are sitting in a show that's on the Green Snake and Beautiful Lily. And it's, so Goethe read The Chemical Wedding and thought, well, okay, there's a story here, but it could be different. The same impulse could be different. And so out of that experience, he wrote The Green Snake and the Beautiful Lily. So that's an interesting new level of complexity with the whole thing, and very interesting that Shamsa said to me, I just finished the paintings at the end of March, and Shamsa said to me in April, do you think you could put these up? Because we've got the Green Snake and Beautiful Lily happening. And then when you add to it, if you go and watch the video that Shamsa made, you'll also begin to feel that there are elements of each of these stories that are experienceable in the video. And again, it's like where I started, it's not like you go, oh, well this means that and that means that. But it's kind of like you enter into a different way of being that is then echoed in the next thing. It's echoed in, yeah. So I wanted to just draw your attention to that, because it's easy with these things, at least for me, to just go, oh, I don't know, you know, whatever. But if I can enter into the feeling realm instead of into my intellect, I can sometimes perceive something different that's there. And so then I wanted to say two other things. One is that the paintings, so I brought one painting down here, just so they recognize them. They look like this, they're all different. I tried when I did these paintings to not make illustrations, but to try to make paintings in relationship to that element of the story. And so that was a really strange challenge that I worked on, and some I think are more successful as paintings than others. There is a sheet up there that has little pictures that Linda's holding up that at least tells you where you are in the story. And they're all being dispersed, as Zoe said, on Saturday and Sunday. So if you want one, tell me, because then we put on this red thing so that I know. And I have some paperwork for you. And the last thing I'll say is that this group, this online group, who's been doing all of these things, will be doing the Green Snake and Beautiful Lily next year, starting at the end of September. So if anybody's interested in joining that, it's open to everybody. But you have to be willing to do some drawing and painting on your own, at home, not on your computer. Okay, so any questions for any of us? Christopher.
I have to confess to complete ignorance about the book, and I haven't penetrated this at all. But I'd love to hear from the group as to whether or not you feel, having worked this, you came closer to Christian Rosenkreutz, and how that was for you.
You brought the printer to the scanner.
That's probably it.
Well, I don't know if I could make a one-to-one correlation of cause and effect. I'm not so sure that in spiritual life that's always possible or even desirable. But what I found in working through it, I very much felt that Christian Rosenkreutz as a guide allowed me to affirm my own weakness, my own stumbling, my own inability to face some of these things, and that it affirmed a faithfulness to the process. And that's either faithfulness to the process of going through the class or the faithfulness of the process of following an anthroposophic path. But what I did find was this constant attempt to put away trying to understand, but to read it and to take it in on a feeling level, let it live within me, allowing it to live there. And then, without any expectation whatsoever, then one begins to find from time to time things happen in life, things come your way, your book gets lost. I had a book lost during that same time too. I remember talking to Cordelia about that. I was studying a book and it disappeared. There are things like that, if you are awake to them, might possibly correlate back to the path that you are on. So I felt a great sisterhood with Christian Rosenkreutz as he made his travels. And yeah, as I painted through, and I did not do anything like the work that these two have done. In fact, I have more incomplete paintings than any other process that I've been through. I've finished all the apocalypse paintings. I've finished all the paintings on the virtues, but I have quite a few unfinished ones. And there is something unfinished about this journey for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, not necessarily feeling closer to Christian Rosenkreutz, but relating, well, I guess, yeah, closer, because relating to him. And like you mentioned in the beginning, there are these moments in the story where he's maybe not a typical hero, and he's not so confident. He's like, why me? Maybe I don't deserve to be on this path, or he makes mistakes, gets lost, and that made me, I definitely saw myself in the like archetypal journey of it, and yeah, it made me feel closer to myself in a way, and definitely seeing things in my life that I might otherwise overlook or not see the meaning in, but seeing what's really happening, paying more attention to like my own life. Yeah.
Oh,
Hey.
So what was the Taylor Swift lyric?
yeah.
I didn't relate to what part of the
Right. Well, it's her song Mirrorball, and it's a moment in the story towards the end when they're in the tower. There's this 7-story tower, and they're doing this big alchemical transformation, and one of the levels of the tower is a room where there's a big ball of light in the middle, and then all around it are mirrors and windows. So you're in this room and there's just light like everywhere. And so that card is the sun. It's called the Room of Perpetual Sunlight. But when I read that image, I immediately heard Mirrorball in my head, which is, I think it's a beautiful song. It's kind of about feeling like you're performing, even if no one's really watching, and feeling like you're living your life to be observed by others. And to me, that just related a bit to the room with all the light, and not necessarily, although the song feels like she's maybe struggling with that feeling a little, but it's also a beautiful feeling, because that card, and in the major arcana, the sun is like a really joyful, like great card. But yeah, it meant like visibility, like people can see you, and success, and like don't be afraid to be seen and illuminated. And I'm trying to think of specific lyrics. But yeah, I did put a few. And Taylor Swift also got me thinking, like, I don't know, you can say what you want about her, she's definitely like a capitalist, but she uses mythology and she creates mythology in her songs in a way. She's really good at building an image in a way that's not too different from like Andre, who wrote The Chemical Wedding, like using these images to be a vehicle for a feeling or an experience. And then her fans, like her really crazy fans, really kind of obsess over the meaning in her songs in a way that people do with scripture or with, yeah, so I was like, should put it
his pathway. He's met this porter. He had to trade his bread and his salt. And he saw the virgin who was there to guide him to the castle, lighting the pathway. And he was late, and so he had to run down, and he barely got in, passing a lion, and his jacket got caught. And then he's in this castle with all these other invitees to the wedding. But he's super poor and old, and he's like, what am I doing here? And they actually tie him up and put him in the corner with a couple other guys. And and the virgin who's leading the ceremony is like, you all have to be weighed now to see if you're moral enough to attend the wedding. And they go towards the royal people, the kings and queens and duchesses first. And he's like, I don't even know if I'm going to get weighed. But most of them don't do very well. And in the end, he does get to hop on the scale and makes it past. So we're going to explore that with this song here.